You're live.
Hello, it's me, Kyle Ferrin, and this has been an insane technical problem that we've been working out, but hopefully we're good now. Patrick, are you there?
I am here.
Hi, Patrick.
You can
Okay,
hear my disembodied voice.
I can hear you. We had all kinds of crazy stuff going on a minute ago, uh, but hopefully all resolved now. Yeah, we're gonna color some arc stuff today.
I didn't bring
Uh,
anything to color. I'm going to do TTS in the background.
Oh my goodness. Maybe don't strain the internet any more than we need to. Um, you are in charge of the chat, Patrick.
Okay, I'll watch it.
So, okay, so if people have questions or if you want to ask questions or if people want to interact with me, you are my vessel.
Okay,
You are the
I have a window.
avatar of my will.
I have a
And
window that's specifically just the chat. It's not even Twitch.
okay,
It's just the Twitch chat.
okay, awesome. Well, welcome everybody, and hopefully more people are hopping on. Um, but we're gonna color some stuff today. So these are some of the characters that we're gonna use as sort of like a starting setup for the base game of Arcs. Cole told me he needed 4 tyrants to be sort of color coded to the different player colors, so we could kind of have a starting scenario for the base game, and this is kind of how we're going to do it. So these are going to be pieces of card art, which kind of represents the scale at which they're drawn, and we're going to color them today. If anybody wants to ask me or Patrick any questions about process stuff or arcs or anything like that, now is the time. And I'm just going to explain what I'm doing as I do it. So some of these things I've done so many times that I don't really think about the hotkeys while I'm doing it. So forgive me if I don't explain everything perfectly.
What's a
Um,
keyboard?
this is a keyboard.
Oh, okay.
I use a skinny
Ooh.
flat Mac keyboard, which drives some people crazy, but I'm used to it. Um,
Hey, all right.
yeah. So the first thing I do is I'm going to do flat these characters. It'll just make it easier to color them to begin with. So what I do is I'm going to select, just Control A, Command A, the entire thing. I'm going to get my magic wand tool and then Option click outside the shapes. And what that'll do is give me the kind of dancing ants around everything that I do want to color. I'm going to go into some of these negative spaces and also select out of them, so I won't have to do that much cleanup work.
I didn't know
Some,
dancing ants was the technical name.
yeah, this the selection tool. There are some things that are gonna like not have all the way closed shapes. Like I must have missed something on this cape here that I'll just have to do by hand. But this is mostly just a time saving measure and not anything sacred. So
Okay, and so you're in Photoshop, right?
I'm in Photoshop. Yep, I should
Yep.
have said that.
Yep.
This is Photoshop. It's where I do pretty much all my coloring. Then what I end up with is this sort of all of my dancing ants are just on the outside of all of my line art. And what I want is for that selection to be just inside of it. So I'm going to go to my selection tool and modify it and contract. And I usually do like 2 pixels. This is a 600 DPI image. So 2 pixels sets it just inside of that black line. So when I do color fills, you don't have any weird JPEG artifacts that pop out on the outside of it. Um, I should also say I have my selection tool set to sample all layers. That's important. Otherwise, they'll just think, oh, you're just trying to select all the white. But yeah, it's set to all layers. So then I'll go make a new layer underneath this, and I'll get my paint bucket tool and just pick any color arbitrarily and color it in. So you can see here where I kind of missed some stuff, or there are places where the fill tool won't work because like I didn't close in that line right there. So I'm just going to go in with, I usually use the pencil tool because it gives me kind of a hard edge on right there. And I can either just fill that in and try and work it out, or I'll just color it. So Um, I know a lot of professional illustrators I know have Cintiqs where they're drawing right on the screen. I mostly draw traditionally, and so mostly what I'm using for coloring. Uh, yeah, I'm mostly just using this for coloring, and so I don't draw on the screen. I use a tablet, so I'm drawing down here and looking in front of me. So
All right. I have a couple questions, Kyle,
let's
if
do
you're
it.
ready. All
I'm
right.
ready.
Boop, 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 boop. Going back up. Where to go? Kyle, who was your greatest influence in your art? Cartoonist, comic book artist, tattoo artist?
My probably I have to say Bill Watterson. Reading Calvin and Hobbes as a kid, and I mean I also read Garfield and things. My mom used to say that I would. She one of the first things she knew that that I had kind of something unique artistically was that I could draw Garfield from memory at a pretty young age. So probably Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes are some of my big influences there. And I mean, I've even had people say about like the root box art that it looks like Bill Watterson trees in the background. Like, yeah, that's probably where I learned to draw
Yeah.
that kind of tree. So, um,
Are you gonna do any sort of Blorg sort of aliens in arcs here? Like his
like
like, his kind of monstrous aliens that Zap would fight, or
I should. I should. There's a lot more aliens to draw. These ones are just supposed to kind of represent um, different like tyrants in the universe there. So we have a one kind of robot-y looking one, um, and then a human-y one, a long neck alien one, and then this kind of six-limbed lizard
so
guy.
I'm gonna ask, why are you coloring this orange right now?
So basically, I just need something that's high contrast. I just picked a
Sure,
color arbitrarily. I just need to be able to tell the space between the white and the color and the
sure,
black really easily. So I just
sure.
kind of picked a mid-range color. It doesn't really matter at this point because it's just all fill, and I'm going to change them in just a second. Sometimes when I flat colors like this, I'll use something like a fluorescent purple, and like it looks really out of place, but it just makes it easy for me to tell it from the background or the other colors that I am going to use. So, yep.
All right. What inspired you for creating this color palette for arcs?
Um, that's a good question. A lot of times, like this is the color palette right here. Boop. A
Yeah,
lot of times when I'm doing colors for a piece, I think a lot about what can I use in a whole bunch of different ways, in an interesting way. And so for this, I was like, okay, I need colors that can represent skin tones, colors that can represent spaceships and other things, but I wanted to keep the color palette for arcs really limited to set it apart from some of our other titles. And there's kind of an overarching color story to like Root is very kind of autumn colored. It's very orange. And then Oath is very like blue and turquoise. Fort is very kind of pink and orange. So there's sort of this overall aesthetic to it. And I really wanted arcs to kind of look like a board game artifact that could come from the universe that it's set in.
yeah,
So like your grandma's copy of Risk up in the closet kind of thing, where it's like the maybe a little bit faded, or maybe just kind of showing the limitations of like um like the way color is printed on old newspaper comics and stuff, where it's like they were a little bit limited on what colors they could use. And so
mhm,
that's kind of what I went with. I went with primary colors mostly, so I could differentiate things pretty strongly. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question,
no, that's
but
great. Yeah.
that's kind of
So
what
I,
we're
well,
working with here.
while he's working, I'll point out that one thing that Kyle has provided for us as we go through the years is, like for Root, you were drawing the animals for Path because we
Hmm.
talked about making Path I don't even know if it's called Path yet, but we're talking about making a fantasy game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a very asymmetric open world sort of fantasy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, well, let's, we just did fantasy for Vast, and then you came in with um or we just done fantasy characters for Vast, so let's try doing animals and
Mm-hmm.
as a way to express the asymmetry. And now now long gone and Path as the
Mm-hmm.
design moves forward, but it branched there. But so we use those animals, and you also provided a color palette pretty early, and I think that helped kind of shape some of the thinking about Root as
Mm-hmm.
that move towards Root. And that's something you've done for us. I mean, even Dark, you've provided some colors for, and when I was working on Havoc, you provided some colors for that. And I really like that. It's very fun to have. Not fun, but yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's engaging to me to have that like thinking going on this early, and it helps
Well,
me sort of talk about theme a little bit better with just something as simple as color.
and I think it's interesting because, like, I mean, one of the things that illustration can do is sort of give you tools to work with when you're taking part in a different kind of medium. So, like, if you're reading a book and there's just like one or two illustrations in it, that's
Mm.
still giving you like enough visual information for you to populate the rest of the world in your head. So
Yeah,
when I think of something like I mean, like the Harry Potter books, for example, where it's just like chapter illustrations, and it's usually of like an item or a still image and things. It was amazing how many people, when they would go to watch like the Harry Potter movies, for example, and say, "Oh, this matches up with my inner picture of what I thought," and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, they were translating a visual language from one thing to another, and it's not always going to match up perfectly, but that's one of the things that happens is it kind of informs that. I just read this year I wanted to read The Wizard of Oz,
mm,
and I did, and the illustrations in that are are bananas. They're so weird, and but it's interesting how like reading it with those pictures felt different than watching it with the movie images to accompany the story.
no, sure.
Like to me, that it creates two different experiences, and that's kind of what we're hoping to do with these characters is sort of give people a starting place to determine how they want to play.
And
Um,
when cartoonists call me to work on arcs, I'll be ready with a style.
yeah.
Uh, all right. We had a question from, and if I'm going too fast for you, because slowing down
Oh
your work, you give me a holler.
no, you're good.
Okay. Or Brooke, give me a holler. Where do you get this is from Facebook. Where do you get your inspiration for the sci-fi theme?
Um,
All of sci-fi.
all of sci-fi. I grew up really loving Star Wars. I was in sixth grade when The Phantom Menace came out. Um, and we kept the Lego sets in our desks at school,
So
just
ancient
because.
now. Thanks, Kyle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no
I'm
problem.
that probably makes me seem ancient to some other people and makes some other people feel ancient. But we so that was, I mean, we were big into Star Wars and we thought that was great. And
Mhm.
then as an adult got into Star Trek, you know, The Expanse, Alien, just all of those sort of things. And then just sort of the fun of doing concept concept design. I'll just explain a process thing right now. So I don't you probably can't see my windows, but I do this flatting so I can lock the layer, and that way when I'm coloring I can just color the characters and not any of the background stuff. It just makes it easy when we have complicated characters, silhouettes, to not have to keep really inside the lines. I can sort of front load that step and then not have to worry about it later. But yeah. So we sci-fi wise, um I've been watching Deep Space Nine recently a little bit. And then my wife and I just kind of this winter started watching The Orville to see if we would like it. And honestly, like I kind of like it better than a lot of the more recent Star Trek offerings.
It's
It
it's
just
like
seems
It's like he's
It was
shooting for nostalgia, like Star Trek nostalgia almost.
Yeah, well, it's great because it's like surprisingly sincere. Like
Yeah.
it's not. It doesn't feel like Family Guy in space. It is like it's the kind of like parody where it's like, oh, they actually just kind of use this as an excuse to make the thing they wanted to make.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know. I really appreciate it. I think it's good. I think the jokes that are in it are funny, but like it just seems like like a sincere send up of what I like about Star Trek, I guess. But yeah. I read The Foundation earlier this year, since Patrick talked about it a little bit and enjoyed that. I think there's some sort of interesting parallels between Foundation and how Arcs works in terms of like how it tells a story
Mhm.
in parts, like in the time jump from like maybe one session to another, and how like the galaxy changes based on your actions. Uh, So that's I don't know, that was interesting. But yeah, Dune, obviously. I like Dune.
Dune, obviously. What about the black hole?
I don't think I've seen that one, Patrick.
Oh my gosh. It's pretty dull, but it
Yeah.
does have a style, which I liked. Very, very trapped in cassette punk late 70s, but the ships are still big
hmm
face girders.
I think I've seen like production stills and concept art from it, but I've never watched the actual movie. Uh,
But the robots are cool. But I saw them when I was 4, so of course they're cool.
yeah.
All right. Uh,
Should we
have you
decide
got?
how old I was when you were 4?
I did. I
I'm
didn't get
just
to.
kidding.
I didn't get to make I didn't get to make that decision.
Okay.
Um.
More questions?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm
I'm
trying
I'm
to
going
trying to find
slow.
where I was. What are your favorites? I think you kind of touched on your favorite sci-fi. Um, are there planets and arcs? All the planets and arcs terrestrial, or are we gonna get some gas giants and ice planets? I think that's kind of like, from my perspective, that's kind of hand waved away because we're only seeing the universe, the space compressed down to just the habitable planets being the interesting political borders. I'm assuming all the other stuff is still out there, all the
Yeah.
stars and all the gas giants and all the ice boys. But
Yeah, well,
I'll
and
let you. I'll let
I
you
tried to
answer.
do I tried to do some of the planets like the fuel planets with like, cloud structures and things, and other ones being um like some of the weapon planets are all covered with like metal or destroyed, or no, the relic planets I'm thinking of
Hmm.
like are largely like kind of like Coruscant in Star Wars, where it's like the whole thing is a big city.
Right.
Um so I tried to make them all look different. So I'm sure that that includes sort of like the gas giant um, ice planet kind
It's
of thing.
it sort of reminds me of that, it's like that late 70s sci-fi aesthetic with like there's a bunch of sci-fi buildings that form a city, but there's no roads. And
Uh-huh.
there's because people fly or whatever, and there's
hmm
no, like, nature is growing right up to the edge of the building. It's like the buildings were just set perfectly without, disturbing
Yeah.
anything. Whereas if you and I built a city, we'd have to drive bulldozers and
Clear cut.
make some roads and clear things. And yeah, you
Yeah.
wouldn't have trees growing right up to the edge of town. So
Yeah. So I'm just coloring in kind of all the flesh tone. I've tried to color code these a little bit for the player colors. So the dominant color on this guy is going to be the kind of yellow orange uh, player color, but we'll
oh, the
use the
chat
other
got excited
colors.
about Orville and Star Wars.
I, I really like Star Wars. But like I have to say, it took me a long time to check out The Mandalorian because we didn't have Disney Plus for a long time. And I'm just sort of like on a fundamental level not super happy about Disney's acquisition of every other intellectual property. And so, but like we watched Mandalorian and I really liked it. I thought it was good. Because I mean, it's a Western, right? And
Yeah.
Patrick knows I like Westerns. So we watched that and really enjoyed it. I'm gonna go close the store really quick. 1 sec.
I have a fan running in the background, so I'm delighted none of you can hear it. I'll fill in the dead time here, telling you all about my misadventures with air conditioning. Our air our air conditioner keeps losing pressure, and they've finally found the leak, and basically it's just time to replace the air conditioner. So I
I'm
have
sorry.
4 trucks of air conditioner guys here right now, crawling around my lawn working on it. So
We had our air conditioner go out. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. And the guy who came, he was like, if you just wait a little bit through the end of the summer, it'll actually be cheaper to
oh yeah,
replace your air
true.
conditioner because of the timing. And so we did. We just did fans and windows and basement dwelled so we could get the cheaper deal on the air conditioner. But like I was saying, like I really enjoyed Mandalorian, but like I haven't sought out watching the Book of Boba Fett, and I likewise kind of feel like maybe I'll check out Obi-Wan after it's done, or maybe later. I don't know. It's just like I'm busy, and those things don't capture my imagination as much as they used to because I kind of
Uh,
want just new stuff sometimes, and not always just no, nostalgia. Um,
I'll watch Obi-Wan. We watched Book of Fett. I didn't. It's alright.
that's
I
kind of
like
the
Mandalorian.
consensus that
I
I've
like
heard.
Mandalorian quite a bit though.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. Um, but then I've kind of got that way about some other things too. Like I feel like I'm kind of off the Marvel boat a little bit just because I've missed enough things at this point that when I have, well, we've talked about this. Like when I hop back on to watch a show that looks interesting to me, there'll be references to other ones that I haven't seen, and I'll be like, oh, I don't even know what they're talking about. And
The
then in that way, they've kind of grown into the comic books that like you have to pay attention to and know the continuity and how everybody's related and
The
whatever else.
Marvel shame spiral.
Yeah, but
So people are asking about westerns.
hmm
I know from experience. Kyle has this. Boy, what was it, like a demo from you in college? Of it was like 50 Western characters, 80 Western
oh,
characters.
my Cowboys thing,
Yeah, yeah, and a bunch of
most
sailors on another. I have
mostly
the shit with the
Cowboys.
cowboys on it.
hmm
I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up in Utah, and Western books and things were always at my grandpa's house, and I just grew up liking cowboy movies and other things. I have several seasons of Bonanza on DVD. Um, and yeah, I like them.
I'm gonna go. They're all standing around. I'm gonna make sure that they're okay. I'll be right back.
Oh, the AC guys. Okay. Well, yell your questions really loud since I'm not looking at the chat, and maybe I'll sense them. Um, no, I like westerns as like uh, a storytelling format too. Like it's not like you can talk about kind of like entering a situation, solving a problem and then riding off into the sunset. Or just sort of like the frontier aspect that I think translates well to space adventures where it's like, hey, we got to make the most of what we can out here and that kind of thing. Um, the DVD set of Bonanza that I have, somehow they got the rights to the show, but not the rights to the theme song. So you can still hear the theme song playing in the background of the actual show, but during the intro of Bonanza, it plays a completely different song, and it's kind of weird to not have the da 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 that you're used to. Okay, so we're gonna leave this guy where he is right now and work on one of these. Um, hopefully Patrick's okay with his. Whoop, what are we doing? There we go. I had the touch sensitivity on my tablet on. I'm like, why is my hand doing things?
I'm back.
You're back.
Everyone's
Thank
fine. They were just taking a break. I just thought they were like waiting to turn off the power or something, and I
Needed
was
needed
blocking
your
them.
approval.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, we're good.
They're waiting for parts. All right, I'll go back to reading yeah,
The chat.
the chat. Yeah, so we had I had like cut together rules for like a Western duel one time. We play tested a couple summers ago, and it just wasn't I don't know. It wasn't super. Wasn't exciting. wasn't for us. So someday we'll do Western.
Yeah.
Now that you got
Well,
sailing out.
yeah. We got to do ahoy, do pirate stuff. I'm just the kind of person that when I am working on a project like this, I kind of need to fill my surrounding life with related things.
Mhm,
Otherwise, I get distracted. Like I haven't watched any Western stuff really
mhm.
since I've been working on this. And when I was working on ahoy, I was watching, um, pirate movies, Horatio Hornblower, um, Master and Commander, and more like ship related things. And it really did help me like sort of have build up a mental reference pile of like how things work and what like kind of camera angles and things to use when I was working on some of that stuff. So, which is why I've been watching DS9 in the background sometimes. Any more questions? I've been
I'm waiting. You shall repeat your questions if I missed it. Oh, someone asked what they said that you had differentiated oath and root with line weight. And so they had asked what line weight are you using for arcs, or how is it different from the other two?
So this one I'm using O1 pens, and that is pretty consistent with what I did for Oath line weight wise. This one I am not doing really any of the line coloring that I did with Oath or Root. Root has some like the white lines on the highlight areas, and Oath I did a lot of different colors for coloring, um, like chainmail or clouds and other things. And one of the goals for arcs was to keep it kind of as black line as possible, to make sure that I don't know, it's just a space game. I just want it to feel dark, you know. Um, so that's been the goal there. So this doesn't really have the line weight is about the same as what I've done with Oath, but there's just a lot more black than other colors. So.
But, and I mean that probably nicely answers any particular aspects to Arc's art, other than the palette that makes it uniquely Arc's art.
Yep, so outline, palette, and then all the geometric stuff. So like they're because of Oath being set in a fantasy setting and Arcs being set in a fantasy setting and Ahoy being a pirate ship setting. It's a lot of organic shapes, it's a lot of uh round things, curves, sails, boats, trees, hills, tents, everything is sort of organic. So the thing about arcs is that drawing spaceships, armor, like sci-fi stuff is a lot more geometric. Um, so that's one of the things that's going to set it apart immediately is that. One of the other things that comes up is scale. So when I've been working on the spaceships, for example, I'm making sure that they look like they're on a different scale than the people are. And so for those, I'm using thinner pens. I'm making sure that the texture works accordingly with the different scale. And yeah, I mean, and that's basically it. Just making sure that it looks like you can tell when you're looking at a person versus like a vehicle. And one of the interesting things about Ark's gameplay is because I think some of this character art can inform how you play or how a tech might work. But most of the gameplay of at least base arcs is really at the scale of a spaceship. So that's going to be an important part of what gets visually represented on people's player boards and whatever else.
What are you making custom Photoshop brushes or using the stock ones?
I have a couple custom ones. I can't remember what this one is called. This is just sort of like my round marker brush that I use. This is the one that I illustrated most of Vast with, actually. And that is different than what I used for Root, which was one of Kyle Webster's brushes. The one is gouache brush, gouache a go-go, I think it's called. Um,
I get ads for those on Facebook all the time.
they're good, quality
Brush
stuff.
sets. Not for
Um,
those specifically.
no, but for Photoshop brush sets,
Yes.
yeah, and people can do a lot with really simple ones. I like this one because, and I'll show in a different layer. I can't remember where I got it. Hard round sketch is what it's called. But I like this one because if I push hard, it can fill in the space. But when I lighten it up, it goes lighter and lighter and thinner. So like I can make like, and this is sort of, it's, you can see that artifact's really bad, but it makes it so I can like sample really easily an area, fade it out, sample, fade it
Okay.
out, sample, fade it out, and then I can um, do different things with shading or other things, and all of that is just to simulate uh, traditional like a watercolor effect where the colors kind of bleed into each other, or there's some variation in how like the saturation of the color. So yeah, so this is just kind of a marker brush that both both varies in its line weight and also in its opacity when I draw with it at the same time. So
What percentage of art do you make with paper with analog tool nowadays? It's like the start of every illustration, right? It's still,
yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty much all traditional. Really the only thing I'm doing digitally, which is why I'm doing it for the stream, is coloring. And it's just because it's so easy to iterate really fast when I'm coloring, and that I can color large areas quickly.
Or if your boss changes the color of a player position.
Then I can just color swap it really easy. Yeah, I just like some of the coloring things that I can do, and that like the watercolor aesthetic that I like to use for coloring. Watercolor is probably the least forgiving paint medium there is, because the nature of watercolor is that the paper is absorbing it.
Right.
And so there's not really any way to erase it the same way you would with pencil, and there's not a good way to cover it the same way you could with like oil paint,
Right.
um, because it just absorbs into whatever is underneath it. So coloring digitally for watercolor makes sense for my purposes, but all of the penciling that I do, all of the inking that I do, with very few exceptions, is traditional. It's ink on paper. Sometimes, if I have to do a large composition, like if I'm doing box art or something, I will draw the background completely and I'll draw characters completely, or I'll draw things kind of like in Photoshop layers, just traditionally. Then I'll scan them and then piecemeal them out and put them together. And then I can kind of play with the composition a little bit digitally. Um, but like all of these things were just pencil and then pen. I erase the pencil, scan them, and then color them digitally like this. So
Um, will a lot of Arc's card illustrations not have characters on them? Spaceships, technology, and how does that impact your work?
I think that will be the case. I think there will be a lot more ships and pieces. Like the thing is like I'm gonna kind of cheat on some of that. Is that if we have a piece of technology that's called like the vacuum gun or something like that, it's going to be more interesting for me to draw characters using the vacuum gun than it would be for me to just draw a vacuum gun kind of in space, or
Yeah.
just like floating by itself. And you can kind of think of it like Roots illustrations where you have like the name of the card is Root Tea, but I'm drawing like a creature drinking the tea or pouring the tea or sharing the tea. And that's going to be more useful for showing how like I'm picturing it in the world rather than just a picture of a spaceship or a picture of a piece of technology.
So you'll
So
see you'll draw 3 generations of planet dwellers being vaporized by the vacuum
yeah,
gun, and
by the
that's when
vacuum
we'll,
gun,
we'll get
or
the
just
human.
like a gun being used by something, and then the cat and dog aliens running away from it. Um, I don't know.
uh,
That's a good way for me too of being able to insert kind of some humor into the game too, because
right,
I've had a few people say to me, or not say to me, but have like posted on Board Game Geek and stuff, and they'd be like, "Man, the art for Arcs seems a lot more like dark or brooding than some of the other things that we've done." And it's like, well, a lot of this that you've seen so far is concept art that I've put together that doesn't really go with any specific stuff in the game yet.
right.
Like these are character illustrations for that are but like they're not doing anything. And a lot of like the character of Oath and Root and Vast is showing the characters doing things. Like all of the humor in Vast is in like the goblin cards, like and showing like what they're doing, or like, you know, finding a funny way to illustrate what a goblin trap looks like or a goblin ritual or
The
you
big
know,
X on the ground
a big X on the ground and a rock above their head.
and a
Yeah.
rock above their head. Cam Kendall, do you know this person?
Yes. Yep.
I knew that. Ask
I know, Cam.
first time chat. Kyle, what's your tech setup?
My tech setup, I have a 27-inch Mac computer that is good for drawing and bad for streaming, as we learned today. And then I have like a little dinky monitor on the side that I mostly just use for like keeping iTunes open, or like if I have to have something open on the side. Most of the work I'm doing is on my screen there. And then I have an Intuos Pro, um,
Oh,
yeah, pen tablet that I use. I had an Intuos 4 for a long time, and that was perfectly good. But at my last job, I tricked my boss into buying it so I could get this instead when I left that job. I
you
didn't
write
trick
it
him.
off?
No, I brought my own one to work, and then I was like, "Hey, the next person is going to want to use this," and then he bought it from me
Oh
used,
no,
so
I'm
the
saying,
next
did you
person
write
could
off
use
your
it.
new one? I'm just making sure you take care of yourself.
Oh yes,
Okay.
yep, yep. They've changed a lot of things about how you can write off stuff for tax reasons now, even with a home office. So, um,
All right. Getting the interesting questions from Patrick Leader. How did you impact your taxes? Um, someone asked what cartoons did you like growing up? We talked about top of the hour. It was
I
Cowboy Bebop.
liked, yeah, well, like cartoon shows or cartoons to
Oh,
read.
I think it was. Oh, you're right. Maybe it was cartoon shows. Yeah, let's talk about cartoon shows then.
Because I really liked Batman the animated series. I liked X-Men. I'm a huge fan of Gargoyles. Love Gargoyles. And as I've like, it's on Disney Plus now, but I own the DVDs of the 2 seasons of Gargoyles that are good. And just everyone should ignore that the Goliath Chronicles were ever made. And we I
And
was
Brave
watching
Star.
well, well, we watched Gargoyles with my kids, and I was like, it is crazy to me how much this informed like my whole deal. Like watching it, like talking like some of like the Shakespearean storyline or other things, and I just think, man, this has influenced a whole lot of things. And I had the same experience with Root when I was watching the Rats of Nim, Miss Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, Miss Brisby, she is in the movie,
Hmm.
and the Don Bluth one, and I was like, I remember reading this book in 5th grade,
Hmm.
like as a class, at the same time that I was first reading Redwall, like on my own,
Oh, sure.
and so like reading that and reading both those books at the same time probably informed a lot of my whole deal too. Um,
I should go back and watch. I watched that, and Black Cauldron came out while I was a kid. Maybe I'll see if it holds up.
I just barely watched Black Cauldron for the first time. I love the Prydain Chronicles books, and
Oh,
we've
they're
talked about
amazing.
this with Oath. They're so good, and
Yeah,
I kind of kept away from watching the Black Cauldron movie because I heard it wasn't as good, and it was fine. Like I thought the
yeah,
animation was good, and it was like it wasn't anything like the books. Like I think you have to kind of treat them as two separate entities.
yeah.
Um, but again, like that, my mental picture was so different from what they were like what they were putting together. But I thought what they put together was really interesting. Um, but
I
yeah.
picture it. I always saw it as like Welsh tapestry or something like that. Like I saw
Hmm.
very like I don't
Yeah.
know, tall, broad men in tunics and not
Yeah.
wearing big bulky armor, and yeah, more like a D&D early D&D campaign.
Yeah.
So, cool. Any idea of what you want the board to look like?
Yes. Yep. So the
You heard it here first. Yes.
yes. So I with Oath, we went live with the Kickstarter like the day before my youngest son was born, and I like put together a file for what the board would kind of look like based on the current iteration. And people through the whole Kickstarter was like, "Is this done? This doesn't look very good." And I was like, "Please, I'll get to it. I'm not done yet." And so one of the goals for this Kickstarter was like, we're gonna have more stuff done. We're gonna have more of it, ready to go. But then, like, the board had to change a little bit. We have the difference between the campaign board and the base game board. And so finishing the board kind of slipped down the priority tree of like stuff we can actually get to and have finished. So
Sure.
the board is going to be illustrated in a way where the different regions of space have different kind of line textures, um, and the borders of those spaces. The goal right now and is going to be to border them with like different stars, basically,
Mm.
or like almost like constellations, um, and that will delineate the different spaces. If you've seen any of like and this is going to be a weird place to draw from, but like Tova Jansson's Moomin books, how she illustrated some of like the bigger pieces in those books where like you'll have a couple different planes where it's like here's the ground they're standing on and here's the trees in the background and there's the mountains and there's the sky and it's all just like crosshatch marks, but it's like the direction, the line weight, and the position of the crosshatch marks really helps put those things on different planes. That's the way I'm going to treat the regions of space in on the board. All of that information has got to be a little bit more faded and dropped back to make sure that the the borders and the iconography and the planets are still the most important visually, but the board itself will be a lot more fully illustrated than what we have now on the tabletop simulator or on even La Arc's Kickstarter page, just because what
Mm.
we're using for that right now is paint splatters that I still made, but those are largely background elements that we just put together so we could have something to work with. So, um, more about that later. I mean, there'll probably be a whole thing about the way the boards ends up looking, but that currently is the goal. So,
Hmm.
is that your question, Patrick? Be honest.
No, it wasn't. It was in the
I-
chat.
I'm just, I'm just kidding.
I'll apologize to the person I got a little defensive about on PDG because someone was like, "Are these the final cards?" And they posted like the cards from Cole's design diary, and it was just like an icon, maybe even from an icon website. Are those your icons? I don't even know.
Not no. Well, there's some icons for arcs that are done and some that are
That
not.
aren't, yeah.
And-
And I jumped on. I was like, give us some credit. We're gonna finish this, and I was probably
well,
not it was probably not the right response,
but
but
that's the danger of this process. We still deal with like we had what was it? It was like a Polygon article about Oath, and they were talking about how much they liked Oath. Um, but the Polygon article had a fan of cards as its like main
right.
image, and on the front of the fan of cards was an Oath card that was like from the Kickstarter page that was like no longer what the cards look like at all. Like, and it just like that stuff lives on the internet. You know, it's like pee in the swimming pool. Once it's in there, it's not getting out, but it's not always going to be representative of what the game ends up looking like in its final degree. So I think with any Kickstarter stuff, you want to be able to show your best work and show like, hey, this is what we're trying to give you. But there also is a sort of understanding of like there's a trust element there too. You know, it's not done. You can look at our other stuff and see kind of what our plan is, and hopefully you can trust us with your money.
We'll get it
So,
done. We'll get
yeah,
it done right. We always do.
yeah,
So
and
I
and
just, I
and
just it's more exciting for me as an artist to present the game here than it is done. I like
yeah,
it feels very cynical to me to come on and say, "Hey, give us money for this thing we already did that we could just order and sell to stores." And
well,
and I'm not
I think
no
people
judgment on
understand
other
that.
people. I think there's security to doing that. I just like how we do it.
Well, and you have the people in the Kickstarter comments who are making suggestions about how how we should make the game. Like people understand that this is still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Um, but well, like yeah, there's always this element of like we're gonna give you the best possible thing we can. Like, and that's one of the things I really like about working at Leader Games and working for you, Patrick, is that I never have a fear that like we are going to try and just cash in on our reputation. Like, hey, people really liked Oath, so like here's something else, and like I'll just put cute animals on it, and people will assume that it's like Oath, and then like we can leave the country and like we're always still trying to make the best possible thing we can and not just cash in on our reputation. But
Finally, I can leave the country.
finally, um,
All right, hold on
okay,
one
we're
second. I think the AC people are okay. They're not texting me. Good deal.
okay.
Yeah, we're coming up at 3 o'clock. We did get
Well, and
started a
we're
little
almost
late, so if you want to go a little bit
we're,
over, it's fine. If you don't,
okay.
it's fine
We're
too.
we're getting close on these ones, so I'll just show some process stuff here. But
Okay.
were there any other questions that I missed or
No,
didn't
I
get
think we
to?
got
Okay,
the gist of it. So
okay. So one of the things that I do, even with the brush textures and stuff, is that I have several watercolor. Let's see. I have several watercolor files that I have made myself and then scanned, and I will use those to overlay the image. So like here's one. Whoop.
eh,
And I'll blow that up.
so dramatic.
So dramatic. And then I'll put it on top of everything. So here's what it looks like before. And then I'll set that layer to overlay. And you can see that this is really kind of too dark right now, but you can tell like this kind of the texture that it gives that. And then I will knock these back onto their own layer and merge the line art and the colored stuff together. And then I can just apply it to that. So, I mean, the other thing that does is that it makes it on like close inspection. You can see all of the just it makes it look more like watercolor than if I didn't do that step. Um, and even if it like is not super visual or doesn't like you can't see it at that pixel resolution when it ends up getting printed on a card, I do think it changes the overall feel of how the game like feels in your hand, or looks on a card. It just makes everything a little bit less shiny. And especially for a sci-fi game, I think it's important, like that my take on a sci-fi game is still that like it looks it looks handmade. It looks traditionally rendered. And the the appeal of that carries through.
And very
Um,
lived in
yeah, yeah.
in the
I mean,
end.
well, and board games are kind of like children's books where it's like it's something you're going to touch, you know. Where
Yeah.
I'm looking at it on a screen right now, and we're looking at it on the screen right now, but eventually it's going to be printed, and the quality of that is an important thing to keep in mind for every part of the process. But
Do
yep.
you I think this is a great question. Somebody asked you to make thumbnails and look at them before you finish. And
Mhm.
I'm going to jump in a little bit further. Even like, I think this is actually a really important part of the art direction that I think is missed frequently. Oh, the
What?
something else has happened in the yard. Sorry.
That's
Um,
oh,
so I'll tell you after the stream.
okay.
Um, so like, do you like? I think this is an important part of the game design process is that you have to look at what things are going to look like on the card or on the board or on the piece and be very aware of what you're making as you
Hmm.
go, because I think too often people do something that should be on a cover, perhaps, and then put that on a card, shrink it down to a card, and you lose everything in it.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment about that or?
Yeah, so one of the things is that composition is really important for those sorts of things. So like Oath's cards are all vertically oriented art pieces because of the way the icons lay on top of them, but
Mhm,
roots are mostly square or horizontal because
mhm.
of that. I do thumbnail, like here's, I don't know if you can see super well, but like here's some of the sketch type stuff that I do for some of these. So like this is the, whoop, wrong side. This is like the robot and the big guy
Oh, you
and
got
some
really loud.
oh, sorry. Am I still really loud?
Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry, I'll talk quiet.
Okay.
But just some different sketches and stuff. Um to lay out kind of a general silhouette or to capture a composition for how something's gonna look at the end. Um and I
I made my
already
head.
draw.
I made my headphones louder with the mechanical switch by accident when I stood up. That's why.
Oh, oh, gotcha. I was like, I'm going nuts. A
I,
lot of
I
times
literally sat down on it.
A lot of times I will sketch something, and then if I like the sketch enough, I will just ink on top of that. Um, because a lot of what I am drawing, or so like here's a sketch for the box art, for example. Um, but like and then here's an example of me drawing the characters separately and then composing them on the cover. Um, but I'll do a lot of them. Yeah, I'll do a lot of composition stuff with just pencil, and then ink stuff separately. And with these, if I draw something and I don't like it, I just draw it again. I don't get too precious with my materials. So if I were to draw this alien and I didn't like the way his head looked, I would just draw the whole thing over again. And then it makes for practice as well as a part of the process. So yeah, I think we're done.
Yeah,
I
I think
can't.
so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, if anybody has any other questions or anything, they can reach out to the Leader Games account on Twitter or me on Twitter. And
Or
yeah,
contact support if you need help. I was
yeah.
gonna say at some point, somebody said, at what point do I see the characters and how granular are my approvals? Um, if arcs were my project, I'd be far more involved, right? Like earlier. But since this
Hmm.
is you and Cole working on this, it's more just me. If I see anything that I think would be offensive, which hasn't happened in years,
Yeah.
then I'd comment. But yeah, otherwise
Back
I
when I
don't.
used to draw really offensive stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
back when
it's
you yeah.
well, yeah, and there's I don't know. We have a relationship, and Cole and I have a relationship too. That I think like we talk about a lot of stuff pretty early on,
Yeah.
and then a little bit more as we gain momentum. And there's kind of a switch that gets flipped when I have to illustrate 200 cards, where it's just like I'm just going.
Yeah, we
I'm
gotta
just
get
gonna
it
go
done. We
for it.
can't
Yeah,
discuss it.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm just going. And then I mean, obviously, I still upload everything to our Slack or whatever. And then if somebody's like, "Hey, this looks terrible," or then they could tell me. and rework things, but I haven't had to rework too many things unless like a card power has changed or things like that.
Well,
But
I'm still going to hold you to that 10% of the vast redos that you said you would do for me on the contract that we signed. So
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
get back. I'll invoke that any day now. So all
sounds
right,
good.
all right, everybody. Thanks for thanks for coming on stream, asking questions, reaching out. And Kyle, you're doing a great job. It's amazing.
Thanks.
I
You
love working
too,
with you.
Patrick.
Oh no, I
Everyone's
just
great.
I just
No,
sit in my office and yell a lot. So all
no,
right,
you're
take care,
good.
everybody.
Okay, you're ending the stream on your end.